This is Our Rough Draft, a podcast, real talk for real relationships.
Welcome to Our Rough Draft, where we share real stories from marriage, work, life, and the adventures along the way. We'll laugh, maybe get real, and hopefully help you spark some new conversations in your own life.
I'm Denise, the wild, emotional one who loves words and big ideas.
And I'm Tim. I'm the practical level one who fixes what she dreams of.
That is true. And this is Our Rough Draft, where we share the stories we're still living. Hello. Welcome to Our Rough Draft.
Welcome.
Excited to get started today. It's been a little bit since we've been in the recording studio.
Feels like it's been a minute.
Yeah. So get caught up. What's been going on this week?
Well, today actually is my last day working for a little while. So starting an extended amount of vacation before going back to work for a month and then being done at the end of November. So a little bit of transition right now. A little scary, a little exciting, kind of a blank slate type of feeling, maybe.
Unknown a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
What about for you?
For me, what's been exciting this week is we have a house guest. We have not announced this to the world, but now is dead at time. Zinni, her daughter-in-law, has been staying with us for her birthday weekend. So that's been fun to be able to spend time with her and see Cooper on FaceTime. He's pretty sad he couldn't be here, but I'm glad that she was able to come.
Yeah. Also in the Navy, got leave for her weekend to come home.
Yeah. So that's exciting. What's been fun, it's been good to have different vibe in the house because it's just the three of us. And so it's been good. Good to have a different perspective.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, so today we're going to dive into listening, not just hearing words, but actually being present, because sometimes we get in our own way when we listen to respond or to be right instead of to connect. And I really thought this was an important one to do right now with everything going on in the world. There's a lot of people not listening to each other.
Yeah, I think transparently we debated what to talk about. And this felt like the right thing to talk about simply because there is a lot going on right now. It's a difficult time, I think, for a lot of different people in a lot of different ways. So we could do the easy topic, but we could also just do this topic, which I think is important.
Yeah. And so when we were talking about doing this, I wanted to share the story from this week that happened to me where I wasn't a very good listener. So I met a group of friends and went out for a fun night. Went to see actually the Moth Story Slam, which if you've never seen a Moth story webinar, podcast, book, video, in person, you should do it because it's really fun. I love storytelling, as obviously we're here doing this. Right. But I went out with a friend and met a new group of friends. And as you know, I'm a proud Sun Devil.
I'm aware.
And I have a bias towards the University of Arizona. Look at me, I just said it.
You did say it.
I know it's hard.
Fixed that.
Yeah. And so this will tie to listening, I promise. When it comes to people talking about the U of A, I'm always ready with a whip, right? Like I'm always ready to be like, no, that's school down south, or, whatever. What do we call Tucson? The dirty tea.
Yes.
Right? Always something. But in this situation, it backfired on me because this woman who I was trying to get to know, I asked about her senior and high school's plans, and she started talking about medical school. So I knew she was going to talk about the U of A, and I was ready with it. And she said, yeah, she's thinking about the U of A. And I immediately jumped to my proud ASU-ness and said, oh, if they stay open, right? Because they are having some financial difficulties. It was based in truth.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. Yeah.
But it totally shut her down. And that was not my intent. I had no intent of being right. I had no intent of even caring where her kid wanted to go to college. I just wanted to get to know her. It was just an opener.
Yeah.
And I shut it down because I was listening for my own stuff, not to actually hear what she had to say.
Well, I think it's a great example of how bias creeps in. I mean, your bias obviously is toward ASU and against U of A. And so the minute you, or the second you feel like the conversation is going toward that school, that bias just jumps in. And to your point, the natural response is a quip, a joke or a degrading comment.
Jab. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that that's happening so much, right? Like I look at people who start the conversations right now about different topics, whether that is boycotting ABC or attending a memorial service that's happening here this week or whatever that is. And the response is ready to defend your own side rather than just listening to what the person has to say and what they have to share.
I think for me, a good example of that is, especially with current topics, which I think everybody probably knows what we're talking about, my logical brain kicks in. And I think that I operate from this point of, and not just about these topics, but I mean, pick a topic. I think my natural response is to operate from a position of logic. What you're saying to me makes no logical sense. I cannot logically understand how you could feel X, Y, Z. And that's not okay, because what you're feeling, what the other person is feeling is just as valid as any logical scientific argument, but I don't see it that way.
Well, and
Sometimes.
it could be their logic, right? Like
Right,
your
right.
logic doesn't win.
Right. My logic is not the logic,
Right.
it's my logic. Yeah. So
Yeah. So that was an example. And I hope that we can keep talking about this a little bit. But I realized I wasn't actually hearing what this woman was saying. And I was listening for proof or an opportunity to be right. And there's no way that that conversation will then be connection.
yeah.
So I then had to make amends if I really want that relationship. I can still be right that U of A financial
There we
difficulties,
go.
but it didn't have to come up in that conversation.
No.
Right? Like it just had nothing to do with that conversation.
Well, and I think that example goes back to empathy. So go with me here. Being empathetic in a conversation allows you to put yourself in that other person's shoes for a second and understand what point, like where they're coming from. So in this case, this mom who's excited about her child graduating high school, potentially going on to college, trying to get into medical school, like she's operating from a point of pride and excitement, and her kid is probably excited. And so putting yourself there, then you can say, oh, how I need to show up in this particular moment is not with my bias against that school, but to be able to say, oh, that's super exciting.
Right. Because it is.
Yeah, it is. It's totally exciting. So I think empathy is challenging in listening when, to your point, you're listening to respond, you're listening with a bias of, I know what you're going to say, or I know X, Y, and Z about the situation that you're talking about. And so therefore I'm going to respond a certain way.
Yeah. And that urge to move quickly too, I think
Right.
comes in, right? Like, because we've talked before about how you have people's attention for just a moment. And so I want to get it all out before they stop listening to me.
Yeah.
And that urge, that pattern plays itself out even when you have enough time.
Yep.
Even when you don't have something you need to say quickly. But because we're so conditioned to doing that, like I've got to say all the important things because this person's going to stop listening and I just lost them.
Yeah, exactly. And you can see when you lose them. I mean, for somebody that you've dealt with even more than like a couple of times, you can tell I've lost them and everything I'm saying now just isn't landing.
Yeah. So that's super frustrating. And I think about the research that goes with this. People have been talking about listening for a good long time. Really, our most basic human need is to be understood, to be seen, to be heard, to be understood. And so that's really at the core of this. I know when I teach my students, I talk about listening to students, listening to their parents, listening to other teachers, listening to their principal, and listening to understand, not listening to respond.
The way I try and practice that, and the word practice I think is really appropriate because at 54 years of age, I still don't have it down. I mean, like I'm still trying to do this, and especially with our kids, especially with people that are closest to us, because I think your biases or what you think you know about them or the situation or what they're going to say creeps in much stronger than maybe if you're talking to a coworker or you're talking to somebody that you just recently met. I mean, I think it's easy in those situations, but it's, man, like 120% easier with your own kids. So the practice is for me to ask a question as the first thing out of my mouth instead of a statement,
Mhm.
even if it's just tell me more about that, or like what was interesting. Like, I don't know, it just comes at the moment, but that way I have a chance to hear more, and that more can potentially shut down whatever it was I thought about the situation, that it'll hold back that bias.
Yeah, I love that. When we practice it at school, it is also adding in that piece of if you're going to ask a question, you have to actually want to hear the answer,
Mhm.
right? You're not
That's
just
key.
using it to fill time. You're actually then engaged because what I just said about we lose people, like the listener, the one doing the listening
Mhm.
has to also practice skills um, as well as the storyteller.
Right.
Right, it's both sides. And I think that it's good to know that listening is a skill that you can practice and get better at. It's not a personality trait. You are not
Oh,
a
good.
bad listener, right? I mean, I think that people think that,
Yeah.
right? I'm just not that type of person. I don't have deep conversations. I don't listen well. Well, you're not trying.
Yeah. Or you haven't learned the skill.
Yeah.
You've grown up in a household where everybody talks over each other, or you've grown up in a household where people don't talk to each other, and so you haven't had to practice it, or there could be any number of different reasons. But to your point, it's not something you're born with. It's not locked in. And like I'm saying, I'm literally practicing it every single day for the entirety of my life so far.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to ask you a question
Oh,
which I feel is kind of fun because I don't necessarily know what you're going to answer is, but I think I know, but I'm not going to go there because I'm going to practice being a good listener.
spin the wheel.
So, what's a story that you've wanted to share but haven't felt like you've had the space to tell
You best story that I haven't had the space to tell you, or
an audience of any type?
I think the obvious that comes to mind for me is stories about my military experience, stories about deployment. I think not so much now that there's a lot of time and distance between when I got back and today. I think that the questions don't come up as much anymore. But I think one of the things I really, really struggled with was, and you and I talked about it, we've talked about it a lot. People ask the question, the very general question of like, what was it like? Or what happened? Or what did you do? And on the surface, you could look at those questions as they're interested and they want to know. And what we've talked about is there's not many times I can count on maybe one hand and still hold, you know, a finger down, two fingers down, the number of times that where somebody asked that question, I actually wanted to hear the answer. I actually wanted to listen. I actually wanted to take the time. And so that story, I think, remains untold in a lot of cases because there's not a lot of opportunities to do that, because that's a subject that requires a lot of conversation. It requires a lot of paying attention to by the other person. It requires a lot of empathy to be able to put yourself or try to put yourself in my shoes and experience what I was experiencing, or whatever story it is I'm telling you. And there's not just one story. There's hundreds of stories, some short and funny, some long and tragic. Like, I mean, you could go anywhere with it, but to ask a very general question like that requires, I think, a very deep level of listening. And so, right or wrong, I've learned over time that most people don't want to take the opportunity to take the time to actually hear the answer. So that's an untold story.
Yeah. So, we have time. Would you mind is to share like one of the like a story from over there that brought you hope?
Let me hope. I think that, well, how much time do we have? I think
Much time as you need.
so. What we found, or what I found, I won't speak for everybody, but what I found to be true was that we as soldiers, basically an occupying force, were received one way by the kids
Mm.
who really didn't understand the political landscape, didn't understand a lot of what was going on around them, just saw us there and knew that we were there. received one way by them, received maybe a different way completely by the adults. And so there was a lot of, I think, really mixed emotions where uh, you you would get a reaction from a kid and you'd think, oh, there is hope. Look at these kids are smiling, they're happy. I think there's hope for this country. And then you look at the adults and the adults be frowning or holding up their shoe and waving at you, which is a sign of disrespect. And so then that would kind of take away the hope. And I think one particular time was through that Any Soldier program. I think you remember where they would send care packages. And so we just got a lot of care packages, like multiple care packages every single day. And I think one of them or multiple of them were stuffed with Beanie Babies because somebody had heard that the kids like Beanie Babies. And so we were going out on a mission, and there's this neighborhood that we drove through out by our area of operation. And there was one particular house that was kind of at the end of a T intersection right on the river, right on the Diala River. And so we would pull up and the kids would always wait for us because we were going out at roughly the same time, which is a huge OPSEC issue and really super dangerous because then they can, hit you at the same time. But the kids would wait at the gate to this house for us to roll by. And every time we rolled by, we throw a Beanie Baby or we throw candy or whatever. And there's probably 3 or 4 little kids at that house. And I remember one time we drove by and we did that. And then I looked up on the roof and the adults were up there and they were smiling. Mm. And that was when both groups, the kids and the adults, were kind of in sync about how they were feeling, at least about us in that moment, like not the US, not the military, not all of it, but just our small little selves. But I felt like there was at least a little bit of hope at that point. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thanks.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's a good answer. And I think that I have been guilty of not always giving you the space to tell the story because, well, we'll get into all of that some other day, but that piece.
What?
Well, just the whole piece of the deployment and like what the two sides were, right? I was trying to hold the house together. I was trying to hold the family together. And you were trying to survive a war. And it's hard when you come back together, when you've both had really stressful things, to hear the other person's story and wait to tell your side.
Yes. And I think that applies in a lot of cases. I think we've talked before about it's not a game of one-upsmanship. I had a bad day. I had a worse day. Let me tell you about mine. No, I want to tell you about mine. I think you can it just builds up and builds up, and it's like a competition all of a sudden. So to your point, who had it worse? For the record, you absolutely had it worse, 100%. But
I don't think that's true at all. And right. And I think that that's we have talked, and we're going to do a Veterans Day episode here in a little bit, but we have talked about the fact that it was hard. It was really hard to go through those deployments. And we came out the other side better, more resilient, with skills that we didn't know that we needed that have served us really well. And I am so forever grateful that we had that experience. I would not wish it on the world, but I wouldn't trade it either.
No, not at all. Not once have I ever wished that it didn't happen. Not once have I ever tried to, like if I had a time machine, I could go back and erase it. I wouldn't do it any different. I think it was valuable. To your point, it was valuable for us as spouses, as parents, as just human beings. Yeah.
Yeah. I absolutely feel that way. So we just have to keep asking those questions and making space for the conversations in the room. And I think that's the other piece of, we also have to build a community around you of people that are willing to hear the stories too, because sometimes you can be tired and not ask the right questions, not go deep enough, not have interest. Like for me, especially in those first days when you were first back, like I didn't want to hear about things getting blown up, people being shot, any of those things. And because you're infantry, most of your stories have to do with that. I mean, I asked the freaking hope story just now, right? Like I don't necessarily want to know that stuff. And at the same time, it's part of the story and you get to share it. And I have to like be a grown up and be able to listen to those stories too, because that is a part of it. And I think I have over time. But again, that's that piece of how do you just hold space for the other person, not take it on yourself? And so I can I can overemphasize, emphasize, not the right word, empathize,
There you go.
um, and feel too much, right? And so sometimes I have to just go to that place of what question do you want me to ask to keep the conversation going versus what are you feeling? What are you thinking? And just keep a little bit of a healthy distance between me and the story so I don't get pulled in to that piece of it, which then, right, I think, which is important, it allows you to feel the emotions and not me take them over.
Yeah, and I think that that's a really interesting point about asking the right questions to keep a conversation going. So whether it's this conversation, whether it's any conversation, but I think your point about an example. So you asked the question of what gave me hope. So that points me in a direction. It points me toward, well, I'm going to leave out the bad stuff because the bad stuff didn't give me hope. The good stuff gave me hope. So we're automatically now in a different category that's maybe a little bit easier for you to empathize with, to, not take on the burden of the feelings. Those other stories, though, like I think conversation killers can be ones where you're not you, one is asking questions that I don't know a good way to put this, but like a question around, so how does that make you feel? How do you like? It's like a challenging question. It's like a question that's designed not for getting more information out of the person, but almost like causing or asking them to dig deeper into their feelings, or their like. Sometimes a story needs to be a story because the
Mm.
feelings are there, but you don't always have to dig in. You don't always have to dig into the bigger parts of the moment, I guess. I don't know if
I
that makes any
know it
sense.
totally does. I think that what that brings up for me is just this idea of how do we connect with, like, I don't need to be your therapist. I don't need to solve anything for you. I just want to connect with you and you get to decide how deep that is.
Yeah.
I don't like it almost feels rude to then tell me, well, what was the emotion that you were feeling while you had, right? Like, whatever. Like, it,
Because I think that's here's maybe a better way of putting it. I think that's a leading question designed to take over the conversation. So if somebody's sharing a story with me and I ask, so how did that make you feel? I don't want to go there. What I actually want to tell you about is, I don't know, the way the sky looked, or like I'm trying to go here with the story, but you want me to go over here. You're leading me to a place, which then in my brain makes me feel like you're hijacking the conversation because you want it to go someplace.
that's,
You want to
yeah,
respond. You want to say something. You want to tie it back to something. So you're asking me a question that forces me to go in a direction. And I think we do that
mhm,
unknowingly. Like I think, in conversations with our kids, with our coworkers, with family members, I think it's natural where you can ask a question that you think is okay, but might be a leading question that causes that story to go someplace else.
yeah. So, a better question for me to ask today would be, do you want to tell us a story from your time in Iraq? And you just pick the story,
I don't.
just following our like line of thinking today.
I think so. I mean, I think that's valid, but I also think, and this is just me, so take it for what it's worth. I think asking that question at the beginning of the conversation is fine because I think you're asking for something that you want to know. I want to know if there's hope. I
Right.
want to know if
Right.
you felt hope. I get to choose the story and tell the story. But if that comes into the middle of a conversation,
Yeah.
then I think that's when it starts leading. So I think at the beginning it's fine because that's what you want to know. That's the question you get to ask.
Yeah. And as the storyteller, you can layer in hope with non hopeful situations.
Yeah.
You can take it wherever you want to go
Right.
then.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. Do you want to ask me a question today? Yeah. We had three that you had a choice from
Show me.
right there.
Can you tell me a time when you really felt listened to or really felt understood?
That's a great question. It goes back to that place of I feel listened to when I can slow down in my answer. So when I am not rushing to keep somebody's attention. So that's when it's not, right? It's not when somebody is focused on something else, moving on to the next thing, hurrying me along, I don't feel heard or listened to then. I'm going to share about when I went to a writer's retreat and we had basically a protocol for how we shared. And it was listen first, then you could ask questions or you could give feedback, but it had to be very clear that you weren't hijacking the story or going somewhere with it. And I got an email from an author that ran it this week. And in the way she started the email, and she's like, Denise, I've been thinking about you. I'm doing this right now. It really connects with who I think you are. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Like in that moment, I realized that she heard me for the time that we were together and she figured out who I was based on that.
Okay.
And then that allows me to now later feel like, oh yeah, I was really seen. So for me, I mean, it's bad. I am up in front of students all day, every day, and I feel like they hear me and they listen really well. They really do. They're not on their phones. They're not on their computers. They're engaged with what I'm having to say. It's really powerful and really such a good thing to be a part of. So I feel heard and listened to every day to that next level of like, when do I feel seen? Like as a human, it's really, spending time with people who are also trying to tell stories. Like that's where I feel like.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think I won't say that I won't say that your answer is almost universal because I have absolutely no idea if it's universal or not. I haven't done any research, but I will say for me that holds true as well. I think that's a huge part of a listener is being able to pay attention to the point where the other person feels listened to and understood, and not that you have to hold my attention. I mean, and it's so
Right.
simple. I mean, you and I have talked about people that we've worked with in the past and they're distracted and they're always on their computer or they're on their phones or and I think it's even worse with remote work now. And I'm finding it a lot where I can see the entire meeting room full of people and I can see that every single one of them is on their computer and not on their computer, like following along with the presentation that's going on, because that's up on the screen.
Wow.
You don't have to look at your computer to see it on the screen. They're just busy doing whatever it is they're doing. And I know that it's not related to the conversation that we're having. And it drives me crazy
Well, and
because it's so simple.
doesn't it make you feel like you're not going to then participate?
Yeah. Nobody else is doing it, so why should I? And especially, I think so. Let's talk about power dynamics and listening. Let's talk about positional power. Or so in a room of different leveled people, could be people that work for you, could be people that work above you, whatever it might be. There is that power dynamic. And if I see the people above me positionally not paying attention, so why should I pay attention? So are they so important that they have so many things going on to the point where they don't have to listen, even though they're present in the room and this is designed to give them information that they need? They've chosen to not pay attention and not listen. And what that does to that relationship and what that does to the trust,
Mhm.
I think it destroys trust. Being a good listener can build so much trust, but the opposite is also true.
It's funny that you say that because we talk about teachers are the worst audience. Teachers, like future teachers, like my students, they're awesome. But like actual teachers, we're really bad. You get us in a group situation and 100% of the people will not be paying attention to the meeting. It's bad. And we all comment like, if this was our class, like
Wow.
we would be so upset. So but it does erode trust when you aren't listening to the people who are presenting, who've put work into, who are ready to share ideas with you. You don't have to love it,
Right.
but you do have to be a good audience for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, that's really interesting. We also talk about listening with the intent to understand versus the intent to reply. We've had that in our lives. Well, wait, I've got an answer. I'm going to respond. But like, it's not helpful. So I think that really draws us back to what's happening in the world right now. The world is so loud and there's so much discontent. And there's so many ideas, and everybody wants their voice out first. And so there isn't a lot of room for listening and asking questions, right?
No, not at all. I feel like that I think has been an epidemic for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
honestly. I think that as we've become more divided, as we've become more entrenched in our own beliefs, and I'm just as guilty as anybody else. I'm not perfect in this. I have my beliefs, and again, like going back to the beginning, I have my logic, and my logic applies, and I can be just as entrenched and just as ready to jump versus listening. It's tough.
We have to break the cycle, though. I think that's the biggest thing. I remember um, a million years ago, I used to listen to Rush Limbaugh to understand what he was saying because I didn't agree with him, but I wasn't going to go into the world and say I didn't agree with him unless I listened to him and knew that I disagreed with him. Right. And so there's a level of we think we know better, but we're not asking. And we have these big groups and lumps of people that you're either here or you're here, but
Mhm.
we're not digging in and asking those questions of like, why does this bring up sadness for you or fear for you or anger for you? Can we talk about that? And what's going on with this story that impacts you?
Mhm.
Because I would rather know that about the person in the room who I'm in the room with than know on which side they're on.
Mhm.
Um, we talk about you can either be connected or you can be right,
Yeah.
right? So sometimes you can be right and be connected. Sometimes you can be right and cause a disconnection.
Yep.
But like, what do you want? You want the relationship. And I'm not saying if people are rude and racist and unkind and abusive that you need to stay in that conversation.
Right.
What I'm saying is if you want a relationship with the person that you are arguing with, you can go deeper into just what's going on in the world and actually find out the story behind it for that person.
Agreed. Yeah, and I think that's an important point. Nothing in what we're saying is endorsing that you have to give up your own opinions, your own values, thoughts, feelings, etc. But I think it is important to investigate, and I think that's something I know I need to be better at, and I am going to try to be better. But even when you investigate, you might still come to the same answer.
For sure. And I also want to talk about this other point is this is not what I'm talking about is this. It is one-on-one, small group conversation. Seek first to understand and be in a relationship with somebody, ask questions, find out what's going on with them, look at them in the eyes, right? Do all of those things. I do not believe these techniques will work on social media. Like
No.
that is not communication. That is not connection.
Yeah.
That is distraction.
Yeah. Agreed. I agree.
And I will use social media to share memes and put things out there and encourage people to come listen to this. But I'm not going to have a debate with somebody on social media. Not ever.
Not worth it.
No, when Facebook first started, so old. I remember my friend Tracy, like it used to be like in the really, really beginning of Facebook, it was cool. Like the bulletin board where you could put the stickers and stuff that you liked and you could engage in different ways. Absolutely so. We did. It was fun.
Wow.
But I remember Tracy saying, I wish it was different. I wish it was a place where we could have dialogue with each other back in the beginning. And I was like, yeah, it's not that because you're not by it all the time. So it's not an ongoing conversation, which that part isn't true. Everybody's by it now,
Yeah.
but it's not authentic communication, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think all of us have had countless examples where we have been sucked into a debate on the internet in some form or fashion and how that turns out. And it's never, at least in my experience, it's never productive. It never ever, you're never going to change anybody's mind because you don't have that ability to have that back and forth. You don't have the ability to look them in the eye, to try and practice a little bit of empathy. You don't. And often you're arguing with strangers. You have zero knowledge of their situations or where they come from or what they do. Or, I mean, it's hard enough talking back and forth in a relationship with somebody that you know versus talking to some random person on the other side of the world or on the other side of the country behind a keyboard.
Yeah. And you're not trying to make a connection there.
No,
You're usually trying to argue.
You're just trying to be right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't want the connection.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. So this week we really talked about listening. So maybe listener challenge, you could start with asking someone whose opinion differs from you a simple question. Can you tell me what led you to feel this way? And just listen. No interrupting, no judging, no faces. This is how connection survives, even when the world feels chaotic.
Yeah.
But again, only with people that you're hoping to have a relationship with, whether that is friendly relationship, neighborly relationship, loving relationship. Those relationships have to have communication as a part.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to decide what level of that, but then you got to dig in and you got to find out those people's stories. So, all right. Renee says empathy is connecting with the emotion that someone is experiencing, not the event or the circumstance. So I don't have to have gone to Iraq. You don't have to have gone to a writer's retreat to experience the feeling that I had when I was doing it or the feeling that you had when you were doing it. And that's where connection lives, which is cool.
Great. Yeah. I mean, I think that really, it's about understanding the person.
Yeah.
It's not debating the issue. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, again, it goes back to empathy. It goes back to, I'm here for you, not for this thing that we're talking about, the relationship. That's the important part.
Yeah, absolutely. And people are going to have different opinions and ideas from you, and you're going to have to figure out if that relationship matters more.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's hard. All right. So think about a time someone listened to you so well, you felt lighter in the world. What did they do differently? And you can then ask a partner, a friend, or a child, when do you feel like I really listened to you? And then listen to them.
And then do it.
Right. Practice it. Our kids might be like, what else? What are you going to say? What else?
Right. Yeah.
So it could change a pattern, and that's okay. That's good.
I think we've seen that out of our kids before. I think there's been a couple of times where we have done it and it's shocking to them, which in and of itself, I think is a little bit shocking because you listen and it comes to the end of it and they're like, say anything else?
Yeah.
Do you have an opinion? Are you going to try and change my mind? Like, nope, just listening to understand. Clearly could do more of that when that feels like an anomaly.
Yeah. And I know for the great world that are raising teenagers, it often happens really late at night, right? When they come home and then right then is when they want to talk. And you got to like get out of bed and get some water so you can engage in that conversation. Because sometimes I want to be sleepy and that isn't helpful.
I just want to point out, and I'm not here to accuse you, but I do want to point out that used to be your MO as well.
Really?
You don't remember?
I do remember.
Oh my gosh.
That was like a relationship rule. I wasn't allowed to bring up anything interesting after 11 p.m., right?
No, it wasn't like you couldn't bring up interesting stuff, but like you're bringing up deep, like, I can't even think of a good example, but stuff that would literally cause my head to explode on the pillow. It's 11 o'clock, snuggled into bed, and all of a sudden you would hit me with some question, something, and you just, I don't know what it was, but there was a period of time where you're pretty famous for that. And I think I finally had to say, look, I would love to talk to you about these things. Like you're bringing up some really interesting stuff or some deep stuff, but can we do this at like 8 a.m. instead of 11 p.m. as we're literally in bed trying to fall asleep?
Right.
So
I don't even know if we make it to 11 p.m.
No, not anymore. Like we'd have to revise that back to like 6 p.m.
Okay. Well, you have a lot of listening opportunities. So pause, stay curious, repeat back what you heard, ask good questions.
Listening, again, we started out this way. Listening is so critical. And it sounds obvious, but I think we often forget. I think it's just important. And especially like we said, even more important in the times that we're in right now. Quote from Adam Grant here, I think sums it up really well. Good listeners are not passive sponges. They're active participants in the conversation. Listening is an activity.
Yeah.
It's not a passive thing. So go out, be active this week, listen to those around you, and truly listen to understand.
Yeah.
That will get us back to being connected, I believe.
I think so too. Awesome. Thanks for being here. We will be back with another episode on maybe a lighter topic next week.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Oh, oh.